My next guest is the author of 7 #1 New York Times bestsellers. You may recall Tuesdays with Morrie, which spent a mere 4 straight years atop the New York Times list. Mitch Albom's latest novel, The Stranger in the Lifeboat, explores the question of belief in God after a yacht explosion leaves a small group of survivors drifting between life and death in a raft. I want to welcome Mitch Albom to the program. Thank you for being here, Mitch. The plot of your novel, and I've read the book, it sounds luxurious at the start. A billionaire, Jason Lambert, invites some of the world's richest and influential people to cruise on his mega yacht. Then this mysterious explosion occurs, leaving 10 disparate souls on a lifeboat. Where did the notion for this idea, this plot, arise from in you?
Well, thank you for describing the plot so well. The truth is that for all of my books, I don't really start with plots. I start with a concept, and the concept was asking for help. I've had to ask for help in my life, and I'm talking about big help, when we want help from God or the universe. And it seems to me that when we ask for help, we frequently expect it to arrive like we're ordering a deli sandwich, like better be here in 5 minutes and it better be what I ordered and be very specific. But I've lived long enough now to find out that help often doesn't look like what you expected it to look like or come when you expect it to come. And so this idea, I wanted to tell a story that could do that. And I said, well, what's the most desperate situation I could think of? A life raft out in the middle of the ocean, 10 people, 3 days, nobody's coming for them. They're running out of food. They're running out of water. They see sharks and they're calling out for help the way we all do. And then all of a sudden they see this man floating in the water, a body, and they pull him in. It's this young guy, very nondescript, average looking guy. They pepper him with questions. He doesn't talk. And finally, one of the passengers says, well, thank the Lord we found you. And he says, I am the Lord. And that becomes the fulcrum of the whole story.
Yeah, no, and it's a shocking moment when that comes. What were you after there? I mean, obviously, it's to shock not only the characters in the novel, but the reader. I mean, as you said, help sometimes comes not in the form you expected.
Right. Well, I mean, you say what was the point of that? I'll ask you, when you read that line, what was the first thought that came into your mind?
Well, the first thought for me was, wait a minute, is this Jesus? Who is this guy? Where did this come from?
Is he or isn't he? And that becomes the question. And here are these people calling out for help, and yet they look at this guy and they say, oh, come on, you're not the Lord, look at you. And he said, they say, if you're the Lord, what are you doing here? He says, well, haven't you been calling me? And then they say, well, so what? You're here. They're very cynical. They say, you think you're here to save us? And he says, well, I can only save you if everyone in this boat believes I am who I say I am at the same time. And that sets up this equation of like, well, if you want help, you're going to have to actually believe it might come in a form other than a big cruise ship that comes along and throws you a line or an airplane that comes. It might actually be this guy. And most of them, of course, don't believe it. And as the days go on and things get more desperate and terrible things start happening, some of them change their mind.
Mitch, you have a talent in all your work for incorporating matters of faith so seamlessly into the writing, and it really allows readers to be intrigued and ponder those difficult questions that I think we all, at some level, want to avoid. I want to read something from the end of the novel, and it really speaks to what you were just talking about. In the end, there is the sea and the land and the news that happens between them. To spread that news, we tell each other stories. Sometimes the stories are about survival, and sometimes those stories, like the presence of the Lord, are hard to believe, unless believing is what makes them true. Now, that's so powerful. In your estimation, have we lost belief? Have we as a people lost faith or the ability to see it?
I think, Raymond, we've replaced it. We've replaced it in many cases with ourselves. We've replaced it with a culture that celebrates us and we can do everything. And, it's not an accident that church and synagogue and other religious affiliation membership was steady throughout the whole 20th century, right around 70 some percent. And then right around 2000, it started to sink. And right now, it's about 47%, a massive drop. Well, what happened in 2000? The internet. And suddenly we were able to celebrate ourselves globally. We were able to tell people we have 300 million followers. Even think of that phrase, followers. We've got followers. You know,
Right.
that used to be reserved for pretty high level people from the Bible who had followers.
Right.
And now we all have followers. And so I don't necessarily think we've lost belief, because I see many people who get to the end of their lives, even lives that have been led very perhaps egotistically, and suddenly they get sick or something bad happens, and suddenly they're saying, "Please God help us, please God help us," which is kind of one of the tenets of the stranger in the lifeboat. That, you know, how come you're always calling out for help only when only when things are really, really terrible? That's when you choose to believe.
Right.
But I do think we've substituted it with a culture of ego. And you know, that's why the guy in the book who throws the party is one of the richest men on the planet. He has everything he could possibly want, and suddenly he's in a life raft with the cook and the deckhand and a guy who claims to be the Lord. And suddenly all his money and all his power don't make any kind of difference, even though he keeps thinking, "Oh, they're going to come after me because I'm so important. They're going to come save me," but nobody does.
Yeah, no, you wrote an excellent piece in the Detroit Free Press recently, and it was just about this, the loss of faith, the replacement of ego and social media. So I'm glad we touched on that. And that piece is worth reading, by the way. I should tell the viewers. There are two characters in the novel who are Haitian, Mitch, which I found fascinating because I know the country of Haiti is dear to you. In fact, some of the earliest readers of this book were teenagers at the Have Faith Haiti orphanage in Haiti. And you met a very special little girl named Chica after the devastating earthquake in 2010 at that orphanage. You and your wife ended up adopting her. You wrote a book about it called Finding Chica, A Little Girl, an Earthquake, and the Making of a Family. Now, initially, your intention was not to adopt her. How has Chica changed your life?
Well, in every way, Raymond. I went to Haiti in 2010 just as an observer, and within a couple of months, I had taken over an orphanage, which I now operate, and I'm at every single month of my life. I have been for now 12 straight years. We have 54 children there that we raise and take care of from their earliest days all the way on up, all the way through college, and we put them through college. And Chica came to us a couple of years into that. And for a couple of years, she was the loudest, brashest, youngest kid we had. And then at age 5, she developed a brain tumor. And we brought her to America to try to find a cure for her, figuring it wouldn't take any time at all. She was only 5. How bad could it be? And turned out she never went home. It was a terrible stage 4 thing. And we ended up adopting her and traveling around the world for 2 years trying to find a cure. And unfortunately, nobody survives what she had. It's called DIPG. But she did live 2 years when they gave her 4 months. And those 2 years changed our lives in every single way. And really, I wrote the book Finding Chica kind of in the pain of after losing her. I wrote Stranger in the Lifeboat in the sort of healing after it. And I mentioned to you that one of the themes was asking for help. Well, you know, when Chica died, I was quite angry with the world and God, you know, and the whole idea about, you know, how can you be a benevolent God and not be benevolent to a 7-year-old girl who had to endure an earthquake 3 days into her life, you know, and lost her mother and was an orphan, and now you give her a brain tumor and now she dies. And there's a moment in the book where, if you read it, then you know, that is, of course, it's a character in the book, but it is essentially me, where one of the characters in the boat says to this Lord character, "Why do people have to die?" And he's crying, and he's talking about his wife. You know, "Why did you take my wife?" And the response is, well, why is it that when people die on earth, we always say, "Why did God take them?" Maybe a better question would be, why did God give them to us? What did we do to deserve their sweetness, their love, their memories? Didn't you have that with your wife? And he said, "Well, I had it every day." And the Lord character says, "Well, those memories are a gift, but their absence is not a punishment. I'm not cruel. This world, I know you before you're born. I know you after you die. Things don't begin and end with this world. I know that you cry when your loved ones leave this earth, but I can assure you they're not crying." And I wrote those sentences as much as a salve for me to try to get over the fact that, you know, okay, maybe Chica wasn't taken from us. maybe she was given to us. My wife and I had her come into our lives when we were in our mid-50s. We had never had children of our own. We had wanted to. It was a prayer that we thought was unanswered at the time. 15 years later, here comes this beautiful 5-year-old girl and gives us all the joy that you get of being parents and waking us up and asking us for breakfast and making jokes and, laughing and giggling and singing and putting her hand over my mouth whenever I wanted to sing with her and all those kinds of things. And who are we to deserve that in our 50s? So instead of suddenly saying, well, why did you take her away? Maybe the better question would be, thank you for giving us even the time that we had. And I hope that that's of a comfort to people who read The Stranger in the Lifeboat who have lost people in their own lives.
Yeah, no, that I was going to ask you, how did that experience with Chica shape you or prepare you to write The Stranger in the Lifeboat? Because to me, it was, I lost a few friends over the last few months, and some of them were very dear to me. And it put those lives in perspective and the gratitude we should have, not only to God, but for each other. And I thought the book crystallizes that, and so many other things. I was really touched by it, Mitch. What's been the reaction? I know you've been on tour. What are you hearing from people?
This has actually been the most successful book of my last 4 or 5. Wow. And it's odd because you don't get to promote things quite the same way with COVID. So I thought, well, this is going to have to sort of sink and swim on its own because you can't go anywhere. We're doing Zoom calls, but that's about it. But it came out at #1 on the New York Times list and the Amazon list, and it's remained up high there ever since. And I'm so pleased because it reinforces the idea that faith and the idea of faith, and it's not a dogmatic book. It doesn't tell you you've got to believe this, that, or the other, but it certainly explores the idea of faith in God. And there are so many people who seem afraid to even touch that topic. I can tell you, Raymond, even the concept of writing this, there were a lot of people in the business that, hey, maybe you want to try something. I said, no, I live out in the Midwest, and everybody here says, God bless you. And then people say, well, God bless you back, no matter what they might feel. And I think there are a lot more people like that in America than maybe some of the coasts tend to kind of view it as like, no, we have to stay away from anything that could have to do with faith because that might offend somebody. I think there's still a lot of people who want to believe that we are not just here to be worm food at the end of our lives and want to explore those ideas. So I was thrilled with the reception. I am still. It continues to be very strong.
Yeah, no, Mitch, I think you've tapped into the reality that there are a lot of people seeking, there are a lot of people hurting and asking the same questions we all ask. And I love that this book points people to some answers and gives them a sense of calm and peace when it's over. So thank you for writing it. Thanks for coming on. It's a real pleasure and an honor to have you on the show. I've long loved your books and your columns. Thanks. The Stranger in the Lifeboat, the new novel by Mitch Albom, is available at bookstores everywhere and online. Help keep it #1. Thanks, Mitch. We'll have you on again, I hope.
You're welcome. Thank you. Sure.